and welcome to episode 1 of Lights, Camera, Business. Today we have with us President Global Talent Development, Mr. Mahim Mishra. TalentQuest is a leading provider of talent management softwares. The developmental tool every organization requires to hire and manage their employees throughout the entire employee life cycle. Mr. Mahim Mishra has over 20 years of senior level management and consulting experience with high growth technological organizations and eLearning corporations. We thank you, Mr. Mishra, for joining us today, and we are privileged to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Mishra, would you like to tell me what are your views regarding Indian startups that are getting a boom in a couple of years?
So yes, I do think that the Indian startups there is this community of excellence. There always has been. In the past, I would say there was not enough money, which is why being invested in India, which is why you saw a lot of research happening out of India, but really funding and startup growth was happening on the US West Coast. That's changing in the recent past because companies have realized that India cannot just innovate but also have the financial and the business acumen to take that to the next level. So this was a natural occurrence, something that I felt was going to happen in my earlier days when I was stationed out of India.
Okay. So, like a place in Bangalore, which is also known as Silicon Valley of India, we are seeing a lot of startups getting started, but we are also seeing that most of them are not even making up for like 1 year. What do you think is the reason for that, for the failure? Do you think the time of execution has a role to play?
Yes, it does, but the startup culture, especially from an angel or a VC perspective, if you know, is 1 out of 10, which means that for every 10 startups, 1 will succeed. So a Google or an Amazon comes after 9 failures, and so what you're seeing, in terms of numbers, is a very natural occurrence. For the next Amazon or the next Google to be created out of Bangalore, there necessarily have to be 9 failures because that is the entire culture. You've got to swing the bat 10 times for that 1 home run to happen on that 1 occasion. So this is fairly accepted in the VC community, and in terms of numbers, you are just seeing that many, but there are some very good success stories out of India. Given the consumer experience and the innovation and money coming in, it's just a matter of time before you will start to see some really big names come out of here.
You have been into business for quite a couple of years. So, what do you think is one trait that every businessman must have? Is it communication, or is it a financial knowledge, or is it networking? What do you think?
Those certainly help. But if I was to put my finger on the pulse, I would say it's your ability to persevere. So it's never easy when you start a new business. You will face challenges, but you've got to put those behind you and continue to persevere. And I feel that is what is going to differentiate success from failure, and for those that will give up.
Okay, so we can see there are leaders like we can say Ratan Tata, J.R.D. Tata, and there are some average leaders. What do you think differentiates them? Like top tiers and average tiers. What do you think? Is it a mindset, or what do you think differentiates?
There is luck, first and foremost. I am a firm believer that if you are destined to perform, then you will. And the timing, which is of course part of luck, that matters a lot. You could have a brilliant idea, but if you're starting it at the wrong time, at the wrong place, it won't succeed. There are enough success stories you heard about VHS, which was the huge hit for a video game. It was not the best platform. There was a better beta, the platform called Beta, which was launched 3 years ago, but didn't succeed because timing was wrong. Google launched Google Glass. I believe the timing was wrong. Today you can see the growth of VR. The growth of AR is starting to take off. there's lots of such stories. So timing is essential. The timing of the idea, the timing of the launch, the timing of what in India we call the stars coming together.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's really important. Or with that, like I mentioned before, it's important to take your hits. Remember that for every 10 hits, one is going to be a Google and an Amazon. So if you've got the capital, you mentioned big names like the Ratan Tatas. We hear about the success of Ratan Tatas, not realizing that for the big success may have come after 9 years, like the Tatas. For Tatas have the capital to take a swing at a number of hits, and we hear about the success from one of them. As a startup, you are generally constrained with capital, so you've got to make your first hit a success and then start multiple ones. But that is a culture, especially on the West Coast. One success leads to another, and it snowballs into more and more.
You have been a part of Indian IT culture for a long time. What do you think is the one change that Indian IT culture must bring?
I wouldn't say I've been part of it for long, but I did spend a couple of years early on in my career with GE in India.
Yeah.
So even this is a challenge we face even today. It's things get lost in translation. So there is always the customer and the client need, and there is the understanding of it and the translation of that need. So the first thing that I feel we can improve greatly in India is the understanding of the essence of that need that the client is creating, rather than have the agile method where we create something and then depend on rework. The second major change I'd like to highlight is with a story. Way back early in my career, I had an opportunity that was presented actually at GE, where a client asked me to come back with an extremely tight deadline of a big project that he wanted to create. And when given that opportunity, I talked to my team, and they said this looks almost impossible to complete in the time frame that they're asking. So I went back to my client, was very unhappy. I thought that would be my last opportunity to ever work with him, and I told him I'm extremely sorry, but this is something that's impossible for us to do. And to my surprise, he turned around, came across and patted me on my back. He said, really, I'm glad that you said that, because the other couple of vendors that I talked to have come back and told me that yes, they will be able to meet the aggressive timeline. And I believe I'm going to give you more work because of your honesty. So that's really led me to this belief about being able to say no. And this is perhaps Indian bit about Indian culture, but I don't think we say no enough.
Exactly.
You will have a more pleased client if you give them more realistic deadlines, and that's a culture change that we should try to inculcate.
You have been in IBM, as you mentioned, GE, Sify Technologies, Origin Learning. Which company do you think provided a wonderful work culture, and how does work culture affect companies' productivity?
It certainly does. There was an independent study, I think, that was done by the Alternate Board, which said that as much as 15% of companies' bottom line can be attributed directly to culture.
Yeah.
I've worked with some large enterprises and some small ones, like you mentioned, but the culture when I was at GE is something that has left an indelible mark. So I admired that very much. It was a culture where you were encouraged to take the swings. Some would work, but some would not, but that wasn't held against you. There was a lot of learning that me, as well as Vinod, who's part of the executive team, that we've taken from GE and we are implementing in our lives today. So I do think that I admired that culture greatly.
What are your 3 values, Mr. Mishra?
My dad was in government service. He was absolutely honest, and that's something that his children have inculcated. And so I believe honesty is really important to build trust. So whether if you're a startup, if you are managing business, it's important to have honesty and basic trust, and that's a tenet that I look for with other candidates, with my team. The second, as I mentioned, is tenacity, diligence. I always kind of have a to-do list of things. I'd like to have a culture where if you've discussed something and you've agreed upon, of course there will be deviations, but you should have or you should own the follow-through. I believe one of the best compliments I got early on in my career was when a manager told me that if I've given you a task, then I don't have to follow up with you. You'd come back and tell me the status, and that's something I've tried to live with all my life.
So honesty and tenacity, being accountable to what you do, that is the main things.
That is, and the third I believe is that's important is to enjoy what you are doing. If you enjoy the work you are doing, not necessarily treat it as a task, just enjoy the work. That if what you're doing you're not enjoying, then perhaps that's not your calling. I don't treat what I'm doing as necessarily as work or tasks that need to be executed. I try to enjoy it.
You have been director in Sify Technologies, vice president in Origin Learning, and now president in TalentQuest. I would like to know your journey so far at TalentQuest.
I'm liking very much being with TalentQuest. Like I mentioned, in bigger organizations there is bureaucracy, there is red tapeism to some extent, and that just comes as part of a culture of being in a big organization. So I always wanted to have the ability to take those swings, and Frank Merritt, who's the CEO, allows me the opportunity to do that. So there are challenges everywhere, but TalentQuest certainly gives me the opportunity to take those swings and make a success of it, and I'm enjoying my time here very much.
Exactly. We generally hear from the successful people, they are into everywhere. They are into stock market, they are into their business, they are into some other business. They manage their time so well. How do you manage the time being a president of a company? How do you give the time to your company, to your family, to yourself? How do you manage that?
I agree. Sometimes it is a challenge, but it's about priorities. For me, my family and what I'm doing at TalentQuest is priority. So some of the other things that I was involved in, you mentioned the stock market, I've taken a backseat, and you've got to reprioritize that all the time. I have a 13-year-old, he's finishing high school, so that's certainly, he's finishing middle school, that's certainly a priority for me. And therefore some of the other avenues or things that I was doing, I have taken a backseat. That's not to say that I will not go back. I used to be an avid bridge player. It's a passion, and I hope that at some point later in my life I will go back to playing a lot of bridge.
Yeah, so that's it for us today. I would like to thank you again for joining with us and sharing your insights with us, Mr. Mishra.
Thank you very much, and good luck.
Sure, thank you so much. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel, The Chronicles of Mindsets, for more such contents. We will see you next time. Until then, adios.